い、皆さんこんにちは。今回はね、日本語の勉強方法の中でよくある間違いを話します。私はね、日本語を勉強し始めましたのはもう9年前です。すごい。やばいね。まあこの長い間にアメリカの大学の日本語授業を受けた留学2回やってました。そう今はねもう日本在住4年目かな。でもね、実際はまだペラペラではない。まあ最後まで見てくれておかりだと思います。Alright, switching to English. Today we're gonna go over the 10 most common Japanese language learning mistakes that I've made or I've seen all the people around me make or talk about. And honestly, a lot of these are just from the Learn Japanese subreddit posts that make me want to go crazy. So this list is gonna start from like basic beginner and we're gonna work our way up to more intermediate, advanced, and eventually just overall mistakes. Number 1, starting to learn Japanese before you can read any hiragana or katakana. What I mean by this is like if you start learning, like you open your Genki book and you just skip the hiragana part and you go right into the grammar. Don't do this. I know you probably just want to get a jump in on Japanese and you think you're going to go back and learn the hiragana and katakana later, and I'm sure you will, hopefully. But if you do that, you're going to lose a lot of valuable time that you could have had getting even more practice in learning how to read hiragana and katakana. I highly encourage you. Oh, the mailman. Oh my god, go away. I highly encourage you to at least learn hiragana before you start any of the grammar stuff. Katakana, it's a bit harder for me at least to master, so at least just get an overview of it and learn how to like write your name. But you will make much more progress if you learn it before you start with the grammar stuff. Number 2, similarly, using Romaji as a crutch. Just because the Romaji is in your beginning textbook, you shouldn't really read it at all except for confirmation after you've read the hiragana Japanese part. Do not make it a habit. Don't do it. The Romaji will go away eventually. It's good to read it just to confirm that what you read is correct, at least in the beginning when you're still, learning hiragana, katakana more. But don't go straight to the Romaji. Number 3, never learning kanji. I see way too many people on Reddit. I'm sorry. I see way too many people who think they can just learn Japanese without learning kanji somehow. And the excuse is always that they want to just talk to people, but look, if you come to Japan and you are like fluent, but you can't read an elementary school picture book, people are gonna be like, what? You're gonna need to learn kanji. I know it sucks. You need to learn kanji. Number 4, over-obsessing on kanji, on the other hand. So I see a lot of people, especially people who learn like the RTK method, who get like really into learning kanji and then they like push back grammar and vocabulary like way too long than they should be. It's good that you like kanji, seriously, but balance is key. Number 5, speaking like an anime character or a child. Anime characters don't speak real Japanese, kind of. Learning your Japanese from anime is probably a horrible idea because if you actually speak to people, they're gonna think you're probably being really rude or really strange. Especially if you base it off like shonen anime, like Naruto. Slice of life anime are a little better, especially if they're like in a high school or something. You can totally learn a lot of Japanese from them, just don't learn how to speak from them. And then for the child thing, if you're an English teacher in Japan, you know what I mean. Children speak really weird and kind of rude Japanese. And yeah, I really struggled with when I was an ALT not just copying everything they said, because it's not something adults should say. 6, now we're getting a bit harder. You need to take what the textbook says about grammar points with a grain of salt. So what I mean is their explanation for the grammar point is probably correct, like literally However, in real life, Japanese is a very delicate language with a lot of nuance and a lot of grammar points. At least in textbooks, they don't accurately communicate the situations when you should use these points. So basically you need to be prepared for everything you know to be a little wrong. Like, for example, nani nani kudasai, hanashite kudasai. Please talk, please speak. It's very rude if you say that to like someone who's not a child. Number 7, figuring out hierarchical relationships and knowing which form to use. Japan is a culture of hierarchy and seniority. So basically, for people who are younger than you, you can use tameguchi, and if they're older or your boss or something, you use like keigo, or, formal Japanese. I don't really know when to use a lot of forms. And I think being a foreigner, we kind of get a little free pass on this. At least for a long time, you will. Some people are not going to care at all about what form you use to speak to them, and other people are going to care a lot. Like my middle school principal, when I was in ALT, I tried to speak in mas form to him at least, and he literally was like, Ali, Japanese is a hard language. You don't need to learn all these hard things. Just use do form. It's okay. And it's like, okay, that's good for me, but horrible for my learning. Really, the safe answer here is at least just use des, mas, these kind of endings for people who you just meet if you're not really sure where they stand. It's always better to be over polite than under polite. Number 8 is aiming for a perfect understanding of something before moving on, especially for grammar points. A lot of people get really obsessed about learning the correct usage of grammar and memorizing it, and that's great. I haven't memorized it for a lot, or I forget it kind of quickly. Honestly, I don't think you're ever going to have a perfect understanding until you actually use it and you hear it. So honestly, for like things like grammar, just getting a rough idea of it first, I think is more important, because then when you hear it used in your immersion materials or whatever, like watching YouTube videos or dramas, and you hear that grammar point, you're going to understand it a lot better, I think, than if you had just stared at the textbook for 20 minutes. You don't need to be perfect. Number 9, similarly, being too scared to speak or write anything in Japanese because you think it's going to be wrong. I think this is especially for a lot of beginner language people. I know I was like deathly afraid of speaking, especially in class, because I knew I'd say something wrong. And you probably will. I probably said something wrong in this video. It doesn't matter, because you're trying and you're putting in the effort, and you're going to grow from all this effort, from trying your best. If you don't speak, if you don't write, you're never going to improve. And honestly, no one really cares. No one cares if you get something wrong, especially Japanese people. They'll say, "Nihongo jouji desu ne," to anything you say. Number 10, the one that has plagued me for years, is not studying for prolonged periods of time. So this is why I've technically been studying for 9 years, but I'd go through like a year or 2 years without studying at all, or hardly even listening to Japanese, and my level would just... My advice for this is, first of all, don't get burnout, which is why I stopped studying basically in every single case. Don't get burnout, and even if you do, or if you need to take a break because you're really busy or something, then at least just keep it up with anime or dramas or music. If you can just at least get passive listening in, it will at least maintain your level, hopefully, or you'll only slide back a little. But just cutting out all Japanese, horrible, horrible idea. Alright, so those are the 10 most common Japanese learning mistakes I have seen or experienced. Let me know in the comments down below, what mistake have you seen a lot or have you struggled with? I'd love to hear it and add it to my list of mistakes, and I'm sure it will help out a lot of other people. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Make sure you like the video and subscribe for more content about my life here in Japan as a graduate student. And I'll see you guys back here again next week. Mata ne!